Good day, my name is Lina Mendoza, and today I will be talking about the significance of Filipino philosophy in the Philippine education, specifically in colleges and universities. Before we establish the significance of Filipino philosophy, let us first define what Filipino philosophy is and what the three approaches are. According to Mabakiao, there exists two words in the compound Filipino philosophy, so let us break it down. According to Mabakiao, the word philosophy here is used in a strict sense where it refers to an academic field. According to Mabakiao, in order for something to be considered a philosophy, it must have the three following qualifications. First, the problem, issue, or topic falls under any branch of philosophy. Two, it follows a methodology used in the field of philosophy. And three, the problem, issue, or topic is supported by arguments. Now, let us move on to the word Filipino. Here, the word Filipino is used as an adjective that refers to the denotation of the word philosophy and not its connotation. So in order for something to be considered Filipino, it must have at least one of the following qualifications. First, the topic, issue, or problem is related to the Philippines. Two, it is written by a Filipino or someone who grew up with a Filipino upbringing. And three, it is written in Filipino or any language or dialect used in the Philippines. Now let us move on to the three approaches according to Trifaldo. First is the traditional approach, which refers to the philosophies of historians, such as Jose Rizal or Andres Bonifacio. Then you have the cultural approach, which refers to the spirit of the people or their collective experiences as a community, or what we call the diwa. Third is the national or constitutional approach, which focuses on the nationality of the author based on the definition of the Filipino on the Philippine Constitution. Now, it is important to accept and understand these three approaches because they will certainly enrich the cultural heritage of the Filipino nation. Now, Filipino philosophy faces a lot of criticisms about its existence, one being that there is no popular Filipino philosophy books or Filipino philosophers. But according to Mabakiao, even if it's not popular, it does not mean that it is not existent. Now we will be answering two questions. One, how can Filipino education in universities and colleges be enriched through Filipino philosophy? And two, how, beyond education, can Filipino philosophy be an avenue to further uphold Filipino cultures? So let us first understand the state of philosophy in Philippine universities and colleges. Currently, philosophy is often classified under the social sciences, which a lot of academic philosophers disagree with, saying that it should be the other way around. Many universities and colleges offer degrees and programs in philosophy, and in the Philippines, there are at least 5 universities that offer doctoral programs in philosophy, and each university has their own specialization. The Philippines also has a mandatory general education curriculum that is required of all undergraduates, and one of the required courses is ethics, which is taught from a philosophical point of view. However, the field faces challenges in the Philippines. First, there is not a lot of available government or institutional funding for philosophical research in the Philippines, which hinders development for both the country and the field. Two, there is a significant lack of research and academic materials that could specifically help deepen Filipinos' understanding of Filipino philosophy. And third, philosophy is an outdated field because it lacks practical worth or employment value, making the subject undesirable. Another problem it faces is that it is a Western-oriented philosophy. As Gripaldo describes it, it is a Western tradition in an Eastern setting. Throughout history, philosophy has been primarily Western as its lessons hailed from Spaniards and Americans. It was Spain who formally introduced philosophy to the Philippines, and the Filipino reformists who studied in Spain were introduced to ideas from the European Enlightenment. When the Americans took over, they further nurtured education in the Philippines and established schools and universities, one of them being University of the Philippines, where the dominant philosophy subject is from the West. To this day, most subjects still have a Western orientation. It is not necessarily a bad thing to have a background on Western philosophy, but its teachings should ultimately be applied and adjusted to fit the Filipino cultures. Many professors in the Philippines have trained and obtained degrees from European and American universities. With such learnings from abroad, Filipino philosophers and students can take ideas and theories from the West and adapt them to their environment. It is important to have a good background on both Western and Eastern ideologies in order to become a world-class philosopher and be able to contribute to further nurture Filipino philosophy. Now let us understand why it is important to shift to Filipino philosophy. Going back to Mabaquiao's definition of Filipino philosophy is rooted in the culture of Filipinos. If it is rooted in the culture and surroundings of Filipino students, then it should be introduced to the current curriculum of universities and colleges throughout the Philippines. According to Guadis III, Filipino philosophy can be understood as an identity for Filipinos. Filipino philosophy is the soul of the people in the Philippines and gives them a sense of pride knowing that they have their own true identity. If the philosophy in the Philippines is centered around Western thoughts, students do not have the means to get to know their culture and themselves in a more intellectual manner. As Riopaldo states, culture influences philosophy as philosophy transforms culture. By giving attention to Filipino philosophy together with perspectives from Western influences, students can not only enrich their knowledge, but also enrich their culture. In order to have a foundation for curriculums to integrate Filipino philosophy, Velas proposes two approaches to teaching Filipino philosophy. For the thematic approach, it can be studied through the help of Western ideas, and as for the non-thematic approach, it can be studied through historical and cultural perspectives. Velas proposes that we study branches of philosophy such as ethics, logic, and aesthetics, among others, to be studied with a Filipino perspective. Through this, Filipino students will be introduced to Filipino thinkers and philosophers who contributed to the field, analyze the morality of Filipinos, learn what it means to be a human being and being human from a Filipino's understanding, and understand reality the way Filipinos experience it. Adding Filipino philosophy to the current curriculum is only the first step in refining the Filipinos' cultures and traditions. Filipino philosophy will also provide a way for students and professionals alike to think critically and come up with solutions to existing or future problems of the Philippines. Now, Riopaldo states that Filipino philosophy can help in nation building in two ways. First is in the national economy. Here he says that the philosophy teacher will contribute to the service sector where they are responsible for enlightening the minds of people in the workforce so they can better understand life morally, politically, and spiritually, and they will be able to become more productive. As for the intellectual national heritage, Filipino philosophy can help trace the historical roots of the country's philosophy and recognize philosophers, and can also help in publishing journals based in the Philippines and make it known to the world. Doing so helps further enrich the knowledge and culture of Filipinos. And as we see, the significance of Filipino philosophy transcends education. As a developing country, the Philippines tends to focus more on science and technology as a way to catch up with other countries. Science and technology is important because it will help create inventions and innovations that will help make lives of the Filipinos better. But we must also understand the value of Filipino philosophy. Filipino philosophy will enrich minds, ideas, and knowledge of the Filipinos. There is no use in science and technology if Filipinos cannot learn to think critically and logically about their world. There is still much work to do when it comes to funding, research, and education. Tito claims that some causes of poor teaching and research in the field is due to the lack of proper motivation and lack of knowledge of research procedures and experience in research-oriented cultures. So as a suggestion, professors should continue to be motivated to widen their knowledge when it comes to the field by introducing them to other philosophical trends. By enriching professors' knowledge, they also enrich their students who are the future philosophers of the country. By doing so, we are investing in the education of the Philippines, and when we invest in the education of the Philippines, we are investing in a more progressive future where Filipino philosophy is at the heart of it all. Because as Dr. Jose Rizal once said, the youth is the hope of our future. Thank you.